kill off the immensely popular original series? Well, the answer can be pretty succinctly answered with streaming. Around the time of VeggieTales' cancellation, DVD sales were plummeting industry-wide, being a third of what they were just 8 years prior. As a series that was exclusively released within this format, doom was all but inevitable. VeggieTales would have to continue on in a new form, and thanks to their recent acquisition by DreamWorks, they would be able to make the transition. DreamWorks was particularly fit to assist with this pivot to streaming, as on June 17, 2013, they set up a deal with Netflix to distribute 300 hours of original content. Releasing amongst shows such as Turbo Fast and All Hail King Julian, VeggieTales would get shaken up as a result of the transition. Seeing as the original series had been going on for a couple decades at this point and had been growing a bit stale, Big Idea figured that the switch to streaming was a perfect time to make some changes. A completely new team would be involved. A new art style created by Doug Temple would be introduced. A different tone would be adopted. All changes that would come together to make a show that is almost unrecognizable to what came before, and fans were not happy. Was the new show actually a downgrade, or was it just people adverse to change? I'll report back after watching the Larry Boy VeggieTales in the House episodes. Okay, so I half agree with the fans. The changes made to this show turned it into something that it wasn't before. A show made entirely for kids. Let's say that there is a spectrum that goes from made for adults to made for children. The original VeggieTales show would lean towards adults, having themes and characters that are fitting for kids, but many jokes and set pieces that can only be fully appreciated by adults. The Larry Boy animated series would lean towards children, still having some jokes for adults, but clearly being a bit more child-focused. Well, VeggieTales in the House would just be for children. This isn't the end of the world, seeing as VeggieTales has always been a series with children as their target demographic, but making it so that parents have nothing to take away removes one of the key selling points of the series. That your kid could watch it over and over and you wouldn't hate it. Heck, in the early days, a large portion of the people watching VeggieTales were college students. Now that I've established that this series needs to be looked at as a show for a different demographic, aka not me as a 20-year-old, let's look at it on its own terms. Most Larry Boy VeggieTales in the House episodes can be boiled down to the villain Motato and his minions wreaking havoc, with Larry Boy putting a stop to him. Along the way, a lesson is usually learned. Larry Boy also has a new League of Incredible Vegetables, featuring Junior Jetpack, Night Pony, and Bobbin. The premise gets quite repetitive, as you just beg for them to finally replace the wackily voiced Motato, but they just never do. For children, though, you could easily see this as a good thing, as they can always know to expect some Motato antics when starting up an episode. Luckily, VeggieTales in the City would come out after 4 seasons of VeggieTales in the House to shake things up. Or, well, shaking things up is a bit of an exaggeration. They're still in a house, but now the main change is having a new villain, Apricot. The episode she is introduced in is actually a highlight of the series, as Apricot sneaking her way into the League of Incredible Vegetables just to sabotage them makes for a pretty interesting plot. Other than that though, there really isn't much to speak on about VeggieTales in the House/City. They are pretty forgettable shows, only notable for the changes made to the iconic original. Characters like Night Pony and Apricot do make for nice additions to the Larry Boy canon, but the way they were presented here was not ideal. The show would end in 2017, leaving Larry Boy and the VeggieTales franchise in a state of limbo. A limbo made even more uncertain as in 2016 yet another acquisition took place, with DreamWorks getting bought out by NBC Universal, which is in itself owned by Comcast. The future looked bleak for Larry Boy. It seems like this was the end, but out of nowhere, some deals would be struck, and the final era of Larry Boy would begin. Following the release of VeggieTales in the City, Phil Vischer would receive a phone call from a company previously unrelated to the VeggieTales brand, TBN. TBN, as it would turn out, had been in the process of licensing the VeggieTales characters from NBC Universal, and they wanted Vischer to play Bob. Having done this song and dance before, Vischer gave a firm no. as his previous performance of the vegetable spat on his original creation. Upon further inspection, though, he saw a show that appeared to be more substantive than the Netflix creation, something that truly had potential. And so his mind was changed, and he came along with the condition of being a voice actor and a writer. Mike Naraki and Kurt Heineke would be brought on too. A perfect storm was brewing for a revival worthy of the VeggieTales name, and as details were trickled out one by one, Larry Boy's return was revealed. His return wouldn't happen until a year after the show's first episode, but on November 23, 2020, Larry Boy would finally return, in Larry Boy and the Cape Coat Caper. Larry Boy's superfan Collie tries to get a few pictures in the Larrymobile while Larry Boy is fighting a robber named Scalini. This goes sideways when Collie accidentally starts driving, ultimately ending in the vehicle getting totaled. Larry Boy went on to question Collie about what happened, and instead of offering the truth of the situation, she lies and says that the Cape Coat did it. Her lying continues over the episode as reporters slam Larry Boy more and more, until eventually the guilt gets to Collie. She approaches Larry Boy as Cape Coat and announces her intentions to not terrorize Bumbleberg anymore. But obviously this was a lie. Her refusal to tell the truth culminates in her having to get saved, and in the process getting revealed. Upon this reveal, she finally tells Larry Boy the truth. While sharing the same moral and plot structure as The Fib from Outer Space, the superfan angle differentiates the episode enough to justify its existence. It almost acts as a modern retelling of that episode. The episode also provides some references for longtime fans, such as the pogo stick from the animated series and some Larry Boy posters. One of the posters is actually a render made by Nintendo Dario and Nibrock Rock. Written by comic book writer Adam Beechin, the quality of this episode sits somewhere between the League of Incredible Vegetables and Larry Boy and the Bad Apple. It would be nice to see some more originality and improved animation, but all in all, this episode is a massive breath of fresh air after the Netflix series. What would come next? Well, we would find out half a year later when Larry Boy and the Angry Eyebrows Trouble released. A happiness parade is happening in Bumbleberg, and awful Alvin is mad about it. He wants everyone to be angry, and the parade is not aiding that goal. To remedy the situation, he unleashes some angry eyebrows to distract everyone while he fudges the ballot to get himself in power. Knowing that something's up, Mayor Blueberry chooses Larry Boy instead, making Alvin even angrier. So angry, in fact, that he decides to unleash all his angry eyebrows across Bumbleberg. One by one, the citizens are taken over, eventually getting even Larry Boy. Alfred is left as the only one still free from the eyebrows' control, so he relays a Bible verse about not holding on to anger. This verse spreads around town, and the eyebrows are released. Following the eyebrows' release, Larry Boy tries to catch them, but then they attack Alvin instead. Wait, haven't we heard this plot before? Well, this episode is actually a straight-up remake of the original animated series episode, but modernized. The writer of the original episode is actually credited because they're so similar. This definitely doesn't push the series in a more original direction, but it honestly isn't really a problem, because of how many minor things they changed. It's basically like if the original Awful Alvin episode had the tone and characters of the 3D ones. This naturally leads to some very fan-servicey moments, like seeing Alvin's lair in 3D. I just couldn't stop smiling